So there are a number of enduring myths in Bitcoin, and one of them has always been this idea that users want to be their own bank. You know, this whole idea of not your keys and not your coins. But this is clearly false, and if you have a Bitcoin business, I mean, we've been operating now for over 2 years. One thing that we know clearly and quite at the core is that users aren't interested in having being their own bank. You know, even sophisticated people forget their keys, and what they're expecting is the same sort of service that a typical financial services provider can offer. So, you know, if you think about the banking systems and you think about the payment systems, those systems are successful because over years they've been developing a core technology that helps the user through that journey, keeping their information safe, keeping their coins safe, and providing the sort of support and that makes that user experience successful. Now, when you want to build a Bitcoin business, you have to think about the foundation that you are developing. And this could be quite boring if you're this kind of person who just likes to develop apps. But a Bitcoin business is not an app. It is something that has a core foundation of a whole number of things, and one of those important things is what's called a control environment. And that's how your business operates. What sort of procedures and policies do you have? What kind of tone does the management have? What sort of ethics is there involved with managing customer data and customer funds? And then, of course, you know, it's not just about the people within the company, but there's also the idea of the owners of that business, the shareholders, and the people who control that business, the directors and the management. And so you have to now make sure that if you are working within that business, that you are making sure that the goals and the mission of all the stakeholders involved are clearly aligned, and that involves having meetings and making sure the communication lines are open, making sure that the directors and the management are remunerated properly. So these are the things that if you're not thinking about and you're trying to build a Bitcoin business, then you're not going to be able to provide that kind of service that users expect. And then, of course, you know, it doesn't matter how sound your business is, how well everybody operates. But we've got the silent partner, the regulatory authority. And what they require is that you do all sorts of things that might not necessarily something that you want to do. You know, you have to follow the laws. You have to now look at the kinds of the regulatory obligations that you have. And without these sort of the foundation, you're not going to be able to create a business that can thrive and can develop, and where you can actually provide value, not only to your customers, but to the stakeholders at large. And also, of course, as a business, you know, as a sort of an entity on its own, it also has a corporate responsibility, a social responsibility. And we don't all just want to make money in our businesses. What we want to do is we want to be a good citizen. We want to make the world a better place. And clearly, if you've been involved in Bitcoin, there's this whole notion of that, something that we can change the world for the better. We can provide value to the people and the users out there. So one of the things now I want to just talk about is how Centbee operates. We have these core ideas around how a business should be, and I want to just tell you about when it comes to building a business that operates at the same level as a financial services company, what are the sorts of things that you should be thinking about? Now, obviously, you're going to want to hire people, and you're going to want to build good systems, and of course, there are a whole set of best practices out there, not just building technology, but also how you run it operationally. And if you stick to these sorts of best practices, it becomes a lot easier to then hire people because then it's not a mystery about how things are done. You're following all the good ideas that have been put in place over time. Then, of course, you know, Centbee, we take this very seriously. You know, we don't just put software out there. Of course, you know, it's impossible to eliminate every sort of bug. But what we do is we take our software through user acceptance testing. You know, we get control groups of people who will try out the software. They'll give us feedback. We do a lot of quality assurance. And then the whole user experience. Because, you know, Bitcoin, even though it seems strange and magical, of course, it's meant to operate like money. And if you can make sure that the software and the systems that you're producing and putting out into the public are easy and accessible, you're going to have a lot more success in delivering those systems. Then thinking about a scalable architecture. You know, when we started building Centbee, you know, we just sort of had this idea that we're going to build an app, we're going to build a wallet, people will be able to store their Bitcoins in there. But as we've been working on this project over the last 3 years, we've realized that the systems that we're actually developing, if we think about the scalability, if we think about it over a long term, what you actually start doing is you start creating a sound platform where you can now think about other business models. Now, of course, in this Bitcoin space, it's not always clear what's going to work and what's not going to. But by us, when we're developing Centbee, thinking about a scalable infrastructure and architecture, it means that now we can start thinking about other businesses. And now, not only do we have Centbee Wallet as a product, but we've now been able to branch out into our remittance business, our cross-border remittance business, which is now being rebranded as Minute Money. That has been possible for us because we don't just have a narrow focus on the way we build out the technology. We actually have a broad focus. And this is just one of the other things. But it turns out that when you start thinking about your scalable architecture, suddenly now you can start thinking about making that architecture available to others. We have a whole platform as a service idea that we are now starting to think about, because all these systems that have been putting into place, being so scalable, it's now possible to think about offering that as a service on its own. Then security audits. This is now something that's incredibly important. If you're holding people's money, it's not good enough that you just make it all fancy and interesting. You have to make sure that that software is sound and cannot be broken. And so what we've done is we've actually got 2 security companies who are specifically focused on trying to break Centbee and the products that we have. And what they do is they give us feedback, and we then go and make improvements to the software. So we are very proud that we can actually offer that as part of the package that comes with Centbee. Then partnerships. Centbee is not just a company that stands on its own. What has made us so successful in the African continent is this idea of connecting with partners that enable new opportunities. So what we have now is we've got a whole retail product where people can go into stores and they can purchase Bitcoin over the counter at just about every single supermarket in the country. And now how did we do that? Well, we needed to have partnerships. And these partners, they don't want to partner with anybody. You've got to have credentials. You have to give them the assurance that you're not going to drag their name down into the dirt. So it's very, very important finding those partners that can enable new sorts of opportunities. And then finally, again, this is something that is more of a sort of regulatory thing. But Centbee has, over the last few years, made it our focus to engage the regulatory authorities, find out what sort of licenses are required when it comes to money remittance or payments. And we have actually applied and actually acquired some traditional sorts of licenses that would be applicable for a typical financial services business. Now, of course, we're not obligated to do this, but we want to show not just our customers that we're thinking about the soundness of the business, but also sending a signal out to the regulatory authorities that we are wanting to play by the rules, and we want to be considered a grown-up business that should be taken seriously. And also, being engaged with these regulatory authorities. My co-founder, Angus Brown, is very engaged with the regulators, offering insights and making recommendations, and has become part of the way that the regulators are thinking about this. That means that we now have this ability, and this is why we've been so successful, to now start rolling out these products across the African continent. So these are just some of the things that if you are thinking about building a Bitcoin business, and you are only really thinking about it in terms of the app, the cool kind of product, the cool app that you want to deliver, you can see that there's a whole lot of other things that actually makes your business have the potential to grow and to become a real force for good. So I haven't really spoken much about the product of Centbee. Obviously, we're in version 2. But what I want to do is I want to give you a quick journey about how Centbee operates. Now, what we have done is we've now experimented with standard marketing and standard advertising, and we found that there's a lot of success. There's a lot of appetite out there in the market for people to actually use Bitcoin products. So we've actually gone out and done typical mainstream sort of advertising campaigns like on radio and so on. Also, what we do is we do a regulatory check. We do a KYC check. know your customer. We require that users, when they purchase these products, enter personal information. Now, of course, for a crypto ideologue, that's an anathema, but we make sure that that information is stored. And not only that, but every single transaction, all the history of transactions that happens on Centbee, we actually do record. And we do anti-money laundering checks and counter-terrorist financing. We do what is called a PEP scan or sanction screening, politically exposed person screening, and that allows us to give our customers levels of, so we can then assign the limits that there are things that they're allowed to purchase. Again, sending a signal to the regulators that we're willing to operate within their regime. And then finally, with all this information, it means that we can give good support. Obviously, Centbee, as a startup, a company that's running, there's the issues that happen, but we make it a huge focus to be able to provide great support to our customers. If somebody has a problem, we have a phone line, we've got email, we've got Telegram, and we make sure that we are always there for them, and we find that that is a great way to keep the customers engaged. Now, Centbee version 2 is out. I'm not going to go through all the different the new things that are involved inside Centbee. Obviously, we've got in-app loads if you're in certain countries. We've got a very strong focus on on the user. We still think of Centbee as a social networking app. So in the send screen, you can now go and add mobile numbers, pay mails, and all that sort of thing. But in the last minute that I have, I do want to boast about and offer you guys something cool that Centbee now does. One of the things that you'll notice if you download Centbee version 2 is this profile. We want to now capture your information. But now, Justin Johnson, he's the owner of a coffee roastery in South Africa, and he supplies the world with coffee. And one of the things he likes to do is invoice with Bitcoin, and he uses his PayMail. But it's very confusing when he has to provide two different email addresses on the form. He's got his PayMail, he's got his justin@centbee.com. But wouldn't it be great if he only had to worry about one email? And that's why I'm very proud to offer to you right now in Centbee what we are now calling personal PayMail. And personal PayMail means that you can now go and put your own email address into Centbee Wallet, and you can just hook up. There's a little step-by-step process that you can do. It's very quick. You edit some DNS. And what you can now do within Centbee is have your own email address as your PayMail, and then you only need to offer one email address to your customers. Okay, and of course, it's only on Bitcoin SV. So I urge you to try and download Centbee. We've got our stand outside. A lot of the team is here today. It's not just Angus and myself. We've got Lloyd, our CTO, Rob, our CFO, Heidi, our head of marketing. And please come and engage with us and find out more about Centbee. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Hannah Jackson for CoinGeek.com, and I'm here with Lorien Gamaroff from Centbee. So lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, one of the biggest themes from last year's conference that Jimmy mentioned was the fact that Bitcoin in general had to grow up a little bit and become, a bit more mature in terms of regulation, compliance. So how do you feel businesses are doing this in general and Centbee?
We take that very seriously. We've had tremendous success down in South Africa and across the continent because we don't just think of ourselves as this little tech startup creating cool products. We think of ourselves as a financial services business. When you are a financial services business, there are certain obligations that you have, not just to your customers, but also to the regulators. And so what we want to do is we want to bring all those best practices and all those important ideas around how to sustain a business, provide the best value for our customers in a traditional sort of way. And so that's why we think we're radicalizing Bitcoin by becoming traditional.
Oh, fantastic. Well, tell me a little bit more about your company then and what it's doing, what you're looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, so we're quite a diverse company. We don't just have a Bitcoin wallet. Well, our aim is to bring Bitcoin to Africa. One of the great opportunities in Africa is the high cost of moving money cross-border. And of course, we can now offer a better solution using Bitcoin. A lot of people from different African countries work around the world and work through the continent. And every single month, they're sending back small amounts of money to their families at great cost. and often it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of inconvenience involved, a lot of paperwork. But by using Bitcoin, we've been able to provide a product that is now faster, cheaper, and we think it's going to have a tremendous effect, a positive effect on the continent. But not only that, we have a whole focus on merchants. We like the idea of Bitcoin as cash. So what we want to do now is we've already solved the how do people get Bitcoin problem with our in-store purchase products that we have. You can go and buy your groceries and Bitcoin at the same time at every major supermarket in the country. And so now we have to now try and find a way of getting people to spend that Bitcoin. So we're building out a whole lot of merchant payment systems as well. Cool thing we've rolled out now in Centbee Wallet, this extension to this idea of PayMail. Now, of course, sending Bitcoin to people has always been complicated. There's this great idea now in Bitcoin SV, which is called PayMail, but that normally means you have to get a different sort of email from your own personal email. Well, Centbee Wallet now allows you to add your own personal email into the wallet, and that can become your PayMail, and you can receive money, and you don't need to try and snatch up a handle, which has been typical up to now.
I can see you're very proud of that, aren't you? As you definitely should be. So apart from that, what else can we expect to see from you in the future?
Well, we are certainly going to be pushing the models that we have right now, which in Southern Africa and in Nigeria. We're going to be expanding into different countries. We hope to start spreading out into other emerging economies, possibly in South America and in Asia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.